Our third speaker is Dr. Ceyda Sahan from Turkey, who will be discussing the impact of risk factor modification on coronary heart disease mortality in Turkish adults for 2025. Ceyda was graduated as a physician from the Faculty of Medicine at PG University in Izmir. She worked in the emergency room for a while, in the public hospital, and then she became a research assistant in the Department of Public Health at Dr. Beirut University since 2011. She has participated in several EU projects, including the MedChamp and the RESCAP-MED. She is also a partner in the Improving Methods of Psychological Risk Anticipation in Europe project. Her research interests are primarily in the field of occupational health and chronic disease. Ceyda, you have the floor for 15 minutes. Thank you.
I would like to introduce our study, which is named Impact of Risk Factor Modifications on Coronary Heart Disease Mortality in Turkish Adults for 20 and 25. Cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death in the world. Low and middle-income countries are disproportionately affected from burden of cardiovascular diseases. More than 80% of global cardiovascular deaths take place in these countries, for example, Turkey. 80% of premature deaths from cardiovascular disease can be prevented. Approximately 24,000 coronary heart disease deaths were prevented or postponed by risk factor change in Turkey between 1995 and 2008. We know it from the study, which is done by Ünal et al. Despite declines over the last years, coronary heart disease mortality rates in Turkey can be decreased much more by interfering to the policies. Our objectives are to appraise the potential reductions in coronary heart disease mortality achievable by modest and optimistic decreases in smoking, diabetes, physical inactivity, body mass index, consumption of saturated fat and salt, and increases in consumption of fruit and vegetables in Turkey population. Impact coronary heart disease mortality model, previously developed and validated in Turkey, was extended to predict potential reductions in coronary heart disease mortality from 2008 to 20 and 25. Using risk factor trends data from recent surveys as a baseline, we modeled alternative future risk factor scenarios. We estimated future trends in coronary heart disease mortality to 20 and 25. Coronary heart disease mortality trends were predicted by Turkstat's coronary heart disease mortality data between 1995 and 2008. Population projections were obtained from Turkstat's projections for 20 and 25. We used two assumptions for predicting mortality. First, we assumed no change in mortality This was a joke.
It was a joke.
No, you have nothing to do with it. Don't worry. We're done.
Okay.
We will not count that many.
Okay. I'm starting. We estimated future trends in coronary heart disease mortality to 20 and 25. Coronary heart disease mortality trends were predicted by using the Turkstat's coronary heart disease mortality data between 1995 and 2008. Population projections were obtained from Turkstat projections for 20 and 25. We used two assumptions for predicting mortality. First, we assumed no change in mortality rates. we used exponential decay model. We predicted two scenarios in risk factor change for 20 and 25. One of them is modest and the other one is optimistic. We discussed the reliability and applicability of the scenarios by using literature and real trends of risk factors in Turkey. Actually, body mass index and diabetes are rising rapidly, and smoking, hypertension, and hyperlipidemia are decreasing in Turkey. There were little change in physical inactivity and fruit and vegetable intake. And probabilistic sensitivity analyses were conducted to overcome uncertainties on model parameters. 95% of uncertainty intervals were based on 1,000 draws. Input variables taken from external sources were randomly drawn from specified distributions, for example, beta coefficients and relative risk reductions. And our results. Projected populations in 20 and 25 were 54 million in Turkey. If there was no risk factor change, mortality is increasing about 30% because of the population aging. With modest change in risk factors, about 50,000 deaths prevented, and optimistic change in risk factors, about 76,000 deaths prevented in total. In both scenarios, nearly the half of these deaths prevented were due to change in diets and fat and saturated fat intake. If we look at the chart for the predicted decreases in deaths, we can see that the effect of diabetes, unsaid fat, and salt reductions have tremendous effects. And also the effect of fruit and vegetable intake and body mass index changes are not very much. Table 1 presents estimated coronary heart disease deaths prevented by occurring risk factor policy options for no mortality change scenario. For modest scenario, 26% of prevented deaths were due to the reductions in diabetes. 22% of prevented deaths were due to the reductions in unsaid fat intake. 16% of prevented deaths were due to reductions in salt intake. And for optimistic scenario, 23% of prevented deaths were due to reductions in diabetes. 24% of prevented deaths were due to reductions in unsaid fat. 17% of prevented deaths were due to the reductions in salt intake. This is the other table too. It presents estimated coronary heart disease deaths prevented by achieving risk factor policy options for lower mortality change. While proportions of risk factors unchanged, the numbers of coronary heart disease deaths are decreasing due to the lower mortality. There are some strengths and limitations of the study. We used country-specific data. Multiple risk factors were evaluated. This is the first study of policy scenarios for coronary heart disease in Turkey. And also, we have some limitations. There was uncertainty in model parameters, like mortality trends. We have done probabilistic sensitivity analysis to deal with them. And also uncertainty in model assumptions, for example, lag times, and trends in treatment not included in the model. In conclusion, only modest risk factor reductions in diabetes, unsaid fat, and salt reduction could prevent around 32,000 coronary heart disease deaths in Turkey. Implementation of population-based multisectoral interventions should be scaled up in Turkey to reduce diabetes, saturated fat, and salt consumption. The government and food industry should act together on this issue. Approximately 1,900 coronary heart disease deaths per year could be prevented if most scenario options were adopted in Turkey. Policies on diabetes and healthy food consumption were the most effective options for preventing coronary heart disease mortality. And also, very thanks to the RESCAP-MED fellowship team, especially Simon Capel, Martino Farley, Piotr Gandos, Maria Guzman Castillo, and all of them worked at the University of Liverpool. They were all involved in developing some of the methods we drew upon in this work. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have 5 minutes, given that Dr. Sahan did. And I want you say a reduction.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better if you say the years gained rather than prevention of death. I mean, you didn't prevent death, you just
Prevent or postpone.
Postpone. So
yeah.
maybe a better measure would be
it
the
may
years.
Be
yeah.
more.
Someone had yes, Dr. Adib.
I have to say that I'm very impressed with this work that is presented. We are lagging behind in this part of the world in projecting our data into the future and analyzing different options in policies and interventions. Part of it is that we have not been able to mount up any longitudinal studies that are worth talking about. We can actually fill in the gaps that you're mentioning. A large portion of what we're doing now is actually filling the gaps using some sort of equations that are sometimes defendable and most of the times undefendable. The kind that we see with the burden of disease studies. Is there any attempt in Turkey to build a Turkish Framingham study?
That's what they're doing. That's what they are.
Is this the beginning of it?
On the I think when I read about you have a sort of a Framingham longitudinal study. Maybe you can mention.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Nabil, for answering the question.
No, because I checked.
Yes, we have a cohort study. It's now 7th year of follow-up.
So I, just like Dr. Adib said, I really applaud this work, but from a actually different perspective. This is critical study, indeed, one of the most important perhaps studies that this meeting now really highlighted something for the future work of the RESCAP. I assume you use 2025 because this is the target for the global monitoring framework, when, when all the countries agree to meet something.
Yeah.
Now, imagine the tremendous task in front of countries right now that they signed on in the regional committee, the UN General Assembly, to develop national targets for 2025. What you have done is you've helped Turkey set targets right now, national targets. Because without this kind of epidemiologic projections, uncertain as they might be, the only other 2 ways to select national targets is number 1, to just say, I'm going to take the global targets. Number 2 is to pick a number, just like that. Okay, I'll reduce my mortality by 20% or by 15%. Which doesn't make any sense. So what you have helped do for Turkey needs to be done for 22 countries in this region, and this cannot be done without the assistance and the support of the experts in this room. And the ministries of health do not have the kind of epidemiological capacity, the sophisticated epidemiological capacity that has to go into developing projections and therefore targets. And the targets are important because you have to develop your action plans to meet those targets. And I hope the ministry in Turkey then picks up on your and say, if this is what's projected will happen, let me see how I can contribute to this through developing a specific action plan with milestones, with deliverables, with timelines and budgets to do this. So this is really crucial.
Can I ask for this?
Okay. But why don't we take the Dr. Habiba, and then you can have.
Yes, this is a comment. I noticed that in Dr. Nada's presentation, that the people were really happy and they were working in large groups, and it was a joyful occasion. They're supporting each other. And of course, in your presentation, I see that this is a big public policy from the top down that will change the smoking and the diet, but from the top down. And what this eliminates is the one-on-one physician-patient relationship, which is so ineffectual in reducing risk factors.
Thank you. Dr. Habiba?
Thank you. Just an information for Celine, Sam, and for all the participants. We conduct the same projects in Tunisia, Palestine, and Syria. We have projection for stroke, for diabetes, for CRT. The problem is the information. The paper is not published. Maybe we have to
Publish or not publish?
yes.
Some are published, some not.
No, it's not enough, I think. We have to share more the results of this research, especially for our region, especially for North Africa. We don't have a lot of information about North Africa. Tunisia is the only country where we have projections of the and stroke and CHD.
Fuad, best because of Fuad.
Actually, a quick comment to what Sam asked about. I think this is important to know that the 4 countries that are involved in MedChamp are doing the same work. But because of now this change in the situation, so maybe it's very important that WHO can work with those countries as a pilot, let's say, for the other 22 countries in the region to set this agenda for 2025. That would be a kind of recommendation as a representative official. Thank you.
Ceyda, but by the way, Lebanon is one of them.
No, not in this.
Ceyda.
Yeah, thank you. And the Ministry of Health has lots of strategic plans to prevent from cardiovascular disease, especially risk factors, smoking, obesity, and also diabetes, like legislation about taxes, that sort of thing. But they have aim, but don't have targets, like you said. Yeah.
I can maybe comment on this because a meeting is planned in next week actually in Turkey about discussing the targets for Turkey. So we will share results in that meeting. It will be a dissemination event for RESCAP-MED and NHS project as well.
Thank you very much.